Good afternoon to you. I'm Merv Wyeth, Benefits and Value SIG. This is today's webinar. You can see a benefits management framework for prioritising programs. And in just a few moments, we're going to welcome Hugo Minney to join us. We're using Mentimeter today. We're going to use it throughout the presentation. We really do want your feedback. So the next slide, what sectors do you or have you worked in? So I think there's an opportunity to put up to 3 answers in here. We see quite a lot of engineering and construction, but it's going to be very interesting to us to find out those sectors, and we can do a little bit of analysis on it later. You can see education is one of those that's leading on this this word cloud that's coming in, but please do enter either your current sector or others, the education, retail, nuclear in there. Keep those answers coming in. Next question. What type of project-related job role do you typically perform? Got 4 here. These are taken from what's called the Project Delivery Capability Framework. And there's 3 roles of some type. And then business or benefits change analysis. So that's benefits managers, business change managers, etc. And we can see a good number on this webinar, so that's great. I can see a lot more of you voting, which is absolutely brilliant. So and we're almost up. A benefits management framework for prioritizing programs. You'll have seen the description of this, but the key element, I think, is why are we spending money? Are we spending it on the right things? And what we would say is benefits management answers the former, but a framework that we're going to talk about helps with the latter, i.e. why we're spending money on the right things. Dr. Hugo Minney, he's co-chair of the Benefits and Value SIG, and he's a joint author of this guide, along with Sarah Paris and some of the other members of the Benefits and Value SIG. And I'm sure Hugo will tell you a little bit about himself as we go through the webinar. So with that, welcome Hugo.
I'm Hugo Minney. I'm accompanied in this room with some people, so if you hear a little bit of background noise, then that's because we're having a bit of a party here. I will start by saying this is taking benefits management beyond programs and into a third dimension. If you think of benefits management as 2 dimensions, then we're coming on to the third dimension of being able to do more with it. So people will be familiar with this hierarchy, if you like, this pyramid, with projects doing stuff, with programs encompassing stuff, doing stuff for a reason, with operations being in there. Some organizations are large enough to have more than one portfolio within the organization. Some organizations have just a single portfolio encompassing all the change, and that would be a general structure for many organizations. If we look at how benefits management works, at a portfolio level, you're choosing to make sure you're doing the right things and you're prioritizing. At a program level, you're making sure that your interdependent projects are delivering in their interdependent ways. You're doing the right things at the right time, and then within the individual projects, benefits management helps you to do them well. To get benefits out, you then go back up on the right-hand side. You can see how that works. It's worth talking a little bit about some of the definitions. So a program is a strategic endeavor undertaken to bring about change, and a portfolio is the collection of projects and programs used to manage investments, and those investments can be in cash terms or they can be in other resources, in scarce skills, in reputation, in various other investments. We talk about investments in general, we talk about return on investment, but that doesn't mean it always has to be in cash terms. We go on, let's talk a little bit about why benefits. What are the benefits of benefits management? Well, PMI publish the Pulse of the Profession probably every year. What they described in their 2018 edition was that champions, and I'll come on to what champions are later, waste 21 times less money in their case, is what they were working on, waste 21 times less money than underperformers. This is on projects and programs that run over budget, run over time, fail to deliver benefits. How do they become champions? They become champions by, according to the 2018 edition of the Pulse of the Profession, a steady focus on benefits management. Previous editions had said it was due to using a tried and tested program or project methodology and professional program or project managers. As the Pulse of the Professional has matured, it started to look beyond that, and it started to look at what organizations focus on. And it's absolutely clear that champion organizations focus on benefits management, and that's what helps to make them successful. What they did highlight is that those champion organizations, which are the ones that have an 80% or higher rate of success, of project success, program success, we use the term, the APM term project refers to project, program, and portfolio. And only a third of organizations had that high level of benefits management maturity. And the other 2/3 were the ones who were delivering as described as underperformers. Makes sense to define what is a benefit so that we all know we're on the same page. A benefit is a measurable improvement resulting from an outcome perceived as advantage by one or more stakeholders, which contributes to one or more organizational objectives. Benefits are in the eye of the beholder. They are relevant to a particular stakeholder. One stakeholder may see a benefit when another stakeholder sees a disbenefit, and they are relevant to organizational objectives. If they're not delivering something that you wanted, it's difficult to call them a benefit. So let's now have a bit of a look at what is benefits realization and what is benefits management. Benefits management has been defined this way: the identification, definition, planning, tracking, and realization of benefits since at least APM's Body of Knowledge version 6 in 2012. That's a good definition. There are a few other definitions, they all come round to something very similar. Benefits realization ensures that benefits are derived from outputs and outcomes. So what benefits realization says is that you are doing the right things in the right way and doing them well, and that you're actually managing your benefits to get your benefits out. If you don't manage benefits, if you don't manage the benefits properly, there's a very good chance that you will get the disbenefits, because they tend to be quite good at managing themselves, and that you struggle to get the benefits themselves. But there's another side to benefits, and it's in the name of the specific interest group, benefits and value, and that's value. Value can be defined in a couple of different ways. The APMG defines it as the benefits in proportion of the resources put into acquiring them, as in a ratio. How much benefit divided by how much it costs to put into it. There's an alternative version. In this case, we've listed it as being a PMI version. It is actually also in the European Standard on Value Management, as there being two ways of interpreting it, which is the net profit, if you like, the net result of realizing benefits minus the cost of achieving these benefits. Where it becomes more interesting is there are different ways to optimize benefits from your initiatives. So to raise value, that's the V with an arrow pointing upwards. We're measuring value as benefits divided by costs. The first column after the B over C is if the benefits stay the same but the costs are reduced, then you increase your value. If your benefits increase and your costs remain the same, then you increase your value. If your benefits increase more than your costs increase, then you increase your value. If your costs decrease faster than your benefits decrease, then you increase your value. And of course, the one everybody aims for is increasing benefits and reducing costs. So it's worth saying benefits and value are intricately linked, which is why APM did bring the two together. So should we have a look at just how successful projects and programs are? This is a worldwide study having a look across different industry sectors. So what we have here is, in the first two columns, we have the cost overrun. In the next two columns, we have the schedule overrun. And in the last two columns, we have the benefits overrun. You'll immediately see in the benefits column, almost none of them have a benefits overrun. They're nearly all negative. And the benefit shortfall is a much higher proportion than evens. In the cost overrun, they're put down in order, so it starts off nice and gentle, that solar power tends not to have too much of a cost overrun, but the Olympics ran a little bit over budget. The schedule overrun, the Olympics was not able to overrun at all, therefore it got there on time. But in nearly every other sector, there are significant schedule overruns. This is an extensive study, a huge study, in fact, so this is pretty much the best study and the one that's being used. Where you hit a problem with this one is that people have taken these figures and used them as rules of thumb. And by taking them and using them as rules of thumb, they've said, so we'll take people's estimates and we'll take off this factor for their overrun, and said, okay, we get rid of the overrun by taking off the factor. Human beings are too clever for that, and what human beings do about that is they double over the optimism bias and end up putting it back in again, so that when it's factored out, it's still there. We're very good at optimism. We're not very good at accuracy, but we are very good at optimism. We've talked a bit about benefits and value. It's worth bringing in risk. Now, this can be found on a page in the book, A Guide to Benefits Management Framework, that many out there will have already obtained copies and no doubt read assiduously. This is one of the diagrams in there. What we're saying here is that the benefits not only have to outweigh the cost, but they have to outweigh the risk. Because if your benefits just outweigh the cost, there's multiple levels of risk. There's a risk to the project or program delivering, and there's a risk to the benefits being delivered, even if the project or program delivers successfully. So it is important to understand that risk is in there. And once again, we've got that fulcrum with return on investment or value. It doesn't have to be measured in money. It can be measured in many different things. We're going to come on to common currencies at a later stage. People always ask about measuring and managing benefits management. One form of it is for, it's to do. I will come on to another way of looking at it, but this is one way to do. Identifying benefits, planning how we're going to achieve them, checking that we are achieving them, and at that point you need to be making decisions, and then evaluating what we've achieved and learning lessons and making decisions accordingly. Before we get on to saying that program management is chance, and then at the end we close, we hand over something of value. We're now looking at that in the context of benefits management being chance play. Those people who are still we start off with the really, if you haven't got a single compelling benefit that makes it worthwhile doing the whole thing, then you're probably taking a bit of a risk. So benefits management starts with identifying the problem, identifying if it's a problem you can do something about, and if it isn't, then it's probably the wrong problem. Identifying the right problem, understanding what the value of putting that problem right is, and then having determined it's worth putting right, then put together the options for what you're able to do within the budget that you've worked out from the value of putting it right. And that takes you through your business case, which then says, this is what we've decided, this is the option we're going for. A is all the pre-planned benefits. The pre-planned benefits say we've worked out what our costs are likely to be based on our options and our selected option, the one that we're going to turn into a program or a project. We understand what all the benefits and disbenefits are, and therefore we can work out, is it worth proceeding? Where benefits management and program management diverge slightly is with the tranche delivery. With forecasting, which you can do with benefits management, you can see if you're on target to hit your values. And therefore, instead of just trying to get to the end of the tranche within specification, you start to make decisions about multiplying up your benefits. So you're saying, if I invest this much, if I change my investment based on the obstacle that I've hit, how can I maximize or optimize my benefits? How can I maximize my value at each point in my tranche delivery? So the divergence is going from reaching the end of a tranche within specification to reaching the end of a tranche while having optimized your value. And then as you close, as you hand over, a number of benefits will emerge that weren't pre-planned, which I've named B benefits, for emergent benefits, which are then delivered by the business. Once again, if you're keeping an eye on the B benefits, then you can make sure they're realized. But if you're not keeping an eye on them, there's a very good chance the ones that will come to prominence are the disbenefits. Benefits tend to need to be managed to make sure they are as successful as we'd like them to be. We're still at this stage on a quick introduction to benefits management. We'll come on to the portfolio, the framework guide, as we carry on, but I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page. So here's a simple benefits map. It's got project benefits on the right-hand side. It's got outcomes, which is the change that results in or should result in those benefits. On the yellow column, we've got some outputs or capabilities in the orange column, and then we've got the things we're doing, whether it's some new technology, whether it's a change, whether it's some training, on the left-hand side. Naturally flows. Another example of that is one in a software product called Amplify, which just shows, in this particular case, you've clicked on the little I above goal, which shows the percentage contribution from each of the stages beforehand. Benefits maps ought to be built from right to left. You start with what you're trying to achieve, and then you work out what you should be doing in order to achieve it. One of the difficulties for benefits management, and one of the things that's got it a bad name, is people start by saying, we've already decided to do these things on the left-hand side, these projects on the left-hand side, therefore we need a team of benefits managers to justify our original decision. And what I'm trying to get to, and I make that as a distinction between benefits realization management, doing what you're told, versus benefits management, being involved right from the start and saying, is it even worth solving this problem? Having decided to solve this problem and decided it's worth it, what are our options? How do we understand the different benefits from each of our options, and therefore how do we select the right option? Working from right to left. What's our goal? What's our problem? What's the benefit of trying to solve it in the benefit column? What outcome do we need to see in order to actually achieve that solution? And therefore, what do we need to do? We're beginning to step a stage up. So you can see a number of program benefits maps on the left-hand side, and they're contributing. They're beginning to contribute to overall strategic objectives. Not every program is going to have a contribution to every strategic objective. That's just for illustration purposes. But you're starting to make sure that your programs contribute to your strategic objectives. They're not just sitting there saying we're going to do something which suits us. It helps to focus the organization on doing it helps to focus the individuals and the programs on supporting the organization to do what the organization is set up to do, which is to be successful. So I'm now going to hand over to you with another question. The question here on the horizontal is that we are an organization where we either don't enforce stage gates or we let some projects through without worrying about stage gates. Some projects and programs get an exception and are allowed to pass through with no scrutiny. Others get enormous scrutiny and the project or program managers feel it's quite unfair. And then on the vertical, do we use the business case or is it only there for investment? Now this is starting out as I would expect, which is going from the top right-hand corner quadrant to the bottom. So but we have a level of inquiry strictly, but they're not to do with the benefits and the business case, they're more to do with the specification. and answer previous questions. This framework enables us to look at objectives up and down common currency or some common currencies of measurement. All the time we're keeping our eye on comparing the value and the ROI. It is important, and we're not just talking about dependencies between projects and programs here. It's important to understand the dependencies of benefits, because as I mentioned earlier, as well as risks to project and program delivery, even with successful project and program delivery, there are risks to benefits realization. And of course, what's also important is that benefits management is primarily about making decisions, and that's why we need forecasts of where the benefits are going, because benefits are typically delivered or typically realized after the program has delivered its capability. That's too late to make decisions. So that's why we want you to use, or that's why we use forecasts. That's why we compare the forecast with the planned, and we look for divergence from the plan. And that enables us to say, well, we've still got time to make decisions while we're only partway through delivering a project or program. What decisions do we need to make to get it back on track? On our next slide, I'm going to show you a tool that is used to help with this prioritization. Now, I can't hear all the people out there, so I don't know how many of you have already used a similar tool. I've put this down as a portfolio register as the third dimension. This is where we're saying not just that benefits management is about looking at your return versus your costs, but you're now able to prioritize. So whereas normal benefits management on a single program helps you to stop, start, increase or decrease the typical activities that you want to do when you're deciding which project to advance, which project to take out. With the portfolio register, you can start to say, and how do we prioritize? How do we prioritize to this year, to this 5 years? How do we decide we're not going to do something altogether? Because we can see the dependency with benefits, and the risk of that dependency with benefits is that if we stop something that doesn't look as though it's directly connected to a benefit, then we may find that a whole lot of benefits were totally dependent on programs that were dependent on that particular investment. So again, IT is probably a good example of this. IT or ICT underpins a great many other programs which cannot deliver benefits without it. What you have in this portfolio register, I'm going to start on the right-hand side with the yellow column, the demand on constrained resources. You have a number of constrained resources. For all the initiatives on the left-hand side in the blue, you can either say we're doing this or we're not doing this. You can tick or cross them to add them in, or you can put a year against them to decide what year they're happening. That then tells you, have you overrun your constrained resources, or do you have enough constrained resources to get you by? And so you can adjust from that. Then you're looking on the middle column, the blue benefits contribution column, to optimize your benefits. And on the orange column, the strategic objective alignment, that one says, am I contributing to all my strategic objectives, or am I getting one and I've got everything piled into one? When you've compiled a list of which initiatives you're actually going to go with, it's worth looking in the confidence column, the green one on the right-hand side, and that will tell you if everything that you've picked is all low confidence, or if you've got a range of confidences, you're doing some risky ones and some not. We can take this a stage further, because we can then do a snapshot, and here's an example from, again, from Amplify, where we look at, in this particular example, we're looking at operating expense reduction versus increasing customer retention. So what we've done is, in column 2, we've looked at, we've got a focus on reducing operating expenses. So in the top of those two little charts in the middle column, column 2, we can see that we haven't retained many customers because of our focus on operating expense reduction, but our target for reducing operating expenses we are meeting. In column 3, we've focused on customer retention. So you can see we've done a good job of retaining the customers, but we haven't done such a good job on operating expenses. And what we've done in column 1 is this is again done by hand. This is not done by a computer. This is just another option, but we're able to compare a snapshot. And it shows that we are able to say which is the solution we want. Again, benefits management is all about making decisions. It's all about assembling the information to help you to make decisions. It's not an end in itself. It's there to help you be more successful. So we've talked a bit about benefits management frameworks. Let's have a quick run through on what are the components of a benefits management framework. There's some obvious components. One obvious component is that we have processes, we have ways to do things that mean that we're not reliant on the hero project managers who bounce from project or program to project or program, putting things right and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake as they leave a program behind because they've been dragged into the latest disaster. By putting processes in place, we avoid that. A benefits management framework will either enforce the existing stage gates or cause you to create stage gates and to ensure that those stage gates are based on a benefit, not on specification or not so much on specification. It is important to make that change, and it is a huge change. One of the difficulties for many project managers is project managers like to be in control, and of course benefits are delivered by someone else. So project managers and program managers tend to find benefits a difficult subject. By forcing them into the stage gates, we can ensure that benefits management becomes a key part of everything. Another part of a benefits management framework is typically these templates and best practices. And best practices, what everybody calls it, let's at least be honest and say half the time it's standard practice. This is where benefits management or benefits management framework starts to come to its own over and above benefits. Benefits typically will report benefits management. Benefits management will typically report a whole lot of different benefits, each in their own way, and it can be difficult to get your head around what's going on. And that's why I've mentioned earlier common currencies. We need to have numbers that we report benefits in that can be added together, whether it's converting time saved into pounds or converting improvements in the local economy into pounds, or finding a way of reporting environmental benefits or reduced risk or intellectual property, finding ways to measure them, report them in such a way that you can add together a number of programs and say, across our whole portfolio, we are delivering the sum total of this. That reporting then needs to be reported into dashboards. And if you think of benefits as progressive realization of strategic objectives, then you can say we've got a plan. We're either delivering to the plan or we're not delivering to the plan. If we're not delivering to the plan, then what decisions do we need to make? It's important to have a dashboard that enables you to make those decisions when you need to make them. And of course, understanding the RACI, who needs to be brought in, who needs to be brought in at each stage, responsible, accountable, consulted and informed. That probably raises a whole lot of questions in people's minds about how do we actually measure benefits, particularly how do we measure benefits at a point that we can still make a decision before the benefits actually happened. So some quick definitions and then I'll get on to some examples. A lag indicator is what we get. It's called a lag indicator because it's in contrast to the leads and proxy indicators. It's an indicator. We want to see more customers, then we wait till we've seen more customers and then we say we can now measure how many customers we've got, and we can say great, we've got more customers. As I mentioned earlier, the difficulty with that is it's too late to make decisions on changing your customer retention policy because you've had to wait till whether you've got the customers or not. A lead indicator shows that progress is being made. There's a clear logical connection between the progress being made and the benefit. So it might be that you're getting focus groups, well, in the case of a lead indicator, it might be that you're finding people are spending more time on your web pages, which suggests they're going to become customers, and you can say with some certainty that they're going to become customers. But sometimes you can't even find a lead indicator, and this is where you have a proxy indicator. So again, picking the customer point of view, then you might say my focus group says that people like my web page. Therefore, I'm saying that that's the proxy indicator I'm using that enables me to make decisions now whether it's worth continuing to invest in this or whether I'm barking up the wrong tree. So coming up with a couple of examples, if we're looking at saving costs, saving costs is a lag indicator. We won't know if we've saved the costs because we're spending all this money on making the change until we actually do it. So we look for lead indicators. A lead indicator could be fewer non-value add activities. In the case of, in this particular example, what we're looking at is patient satisfaction maintained. So it's a health service example. If we're trying to save costs and doing fewer non-value add activities, then we will find we're spending less money on things that don't actually deliver benefits for patients. If we're spending fewer minutes per patient, as long as we're maintaining the patient satisfaction, then we will find that we're seeing more patients. So the cost per patient is going down. We're looking again in a health environment at increase in income. Then again, we will see the increased income after the event. So the lead indicators would be, we've seen more patients. We know that each patient comes with a credit card in their pocket. So the more patients we see, the more income we're likely to see. The more complex cases are more valuable. All the while, if we're not maintaining patient satisfaction, then we've got a fall coming. And we may say if we're picking up patients from the next door hospital, then we know we've got new sources of patients. If anybody's wondering if I'm being a little bit too American about saying patients arrive with a credit card in their pocket, in the UK, they don't arrive with their own credit card in their pocket, but they do arrive with the NHS's card in their pocket. The tills ring every time a patient walks through the door in a hospital. It's an unfortunate fact of life, but there we are. So I'm sure everybody's already found the guide to using a benefits management framework. What it's offering is it's saying the difference between benefits management and a benefits management framework is this consistency across the organization. It allows you to compare investment opportunities. But it's really important to point out when you're trying to implement a benefits management framework that you can't just rely on starting with all new programs and projects to run benefits management on. You'll be bringing it into an organization that's already in flight, already doing things. And these are the 4 stages that I typically recommend you look at. You categorize your programs into, because if you categorize them into more, then it gets a bit confusing. That should cover all of them. Programs that are already underway, they're in flight. Programs that are starting, programs that haven't started yet, they're still in the business case stage, or they may be even earlier than that, they're still an idea or a thought. And of course, getting some of the closing programs and doing lessons learned on them. There's a whole section in the Guide to Benefits Management Framework on how to apply it to existing projects and programs, how to apply it in an existing environment, and it's quite important to understand that. So now back to you. I've got a series of questions for you. What you'll see on the right-hand side is it knows who you are by what you ticked on one of the earlier slides. So that's where the colors are coming from. And it's saying what level. So I can see the numbers clocking up. We're past. There's a few people at the none end on this. There's onto a success. As we've said before, you can go back and answer previous questions. I'm going to keep this going because we've got a few more slides to get through. Let's ask a similar question. What models? More people at the high end here. Good figures, and of course we're seeing much faster voting as well, which is very good news. Now, one of the reasons for placing these questions is that it's important that people are answering these questions with a consistent understanding. And this will all be published. Get in the way of benefits management, benefits realization, and useful. And are you a decision maker on benefit 2? You describe some aspects of benefits management, so be ready with the keyboards once you've answered this. There's a really good spread of answers here, and there's a really good spread of the number of people engaged in producing answers. So here's a question for you. Why may benefits realization plans be missing the typical project and program management approach, which is to say, we will deliver this. Let's get a team of benefits managers on to justify something after the event. I'm sure it's also occurring in plenty of other organizations. And yes, I see there on the left-hand side, politics, forced consistently, or whether they're not. I made this question, time, don't because of lack of time, which suggests that you're chasing something without taking the time and resources to do the business case. I like that comment in the middle, obvious. Now, that's absolutely has said, I had a brilliant idea, it's obvious, and the board hasn't turned around and said, we need to see something serious. And through their very good ideas, all of these ideas will be available. As we said before, you can come back and add some to this question. Why do you think projects and programs fail? On the top right, we've got that people are not managing by themselves. Benefits are quite good at happening by themselves, but benefits are not all that good at happening by themselves. You do need to manage them to make sure they happen. It's another huge challenge. I certainly point to the help us simplify the process. I'm doing my best to do that with the management is child's play, identification and value process easy. But have a look at social impact, social return. That starts to describe how you put a value on some of the more difficult things to measure. Global value exchanges, how to put a value on the love parents have for their children. Lots of really good ideas coming through. As I set these slides up, you can go back and add more to you. Else's answers will help you. You will get a copy of these slides afterwards. Is to do a quick recap. So a benefits management framework allows you to compare potential investments. It allows new investments to be compared. In bad projects, you're not allowing them to go away and do something useful. There's a quick reminder of the benefits management is child's play. If you think of playing an Xbox, then why are sufficiently compelling main in the first place? If you do, then everything else should follow, just so long as you keep everybody's mind focused on why are we doing this. You will find that behaviors emerge that deliver a far greater level of success. A reminder of where to get the book. There's the bit.ly link at the bottom. Again, you'll have it on the set of slides. And reflective practice, which is where Merv takes back over. What have you learnt, or what will you do differently? And I'll pass you back to Merv.
Thanks very much, and have you do the same. It really is important that you start to process this information, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So this is kind of instant survey, if you like. So please do take a few moments to fill that in. And once again, it's absolutely brilliant.
So a number of different ways and builds with safety. Safety on what went before and returning the site back to farmland. And it also provides a boost to the local economy. So those are between them, the return on taxpayer investment, the boost to the local economy, the remediation of the site back to green fields and the reducing risk and hazard are their 4 objectives. And I don't think that in their case the pound note objectives actually takes a priority over the other 3. If you were a university, then you might be saying our university academic ranking, our research ranking, or our teaching ranking are more important than the money. So I think there's a place for different ways of measuring benefits. Mostly people invest financially or invest in time which can be equated with finance, and that's where you start to say we're constrained by finance, and therefore we want to see returns in finance. But I think it's worth opening up attitudes to say there are other things, other ways to measure.
Yeah, I'm going to give you probably just one more question, Hugo, and it's related to that. Any suggestions on how to obtain data on environmental benefits?
There are a number of ways that have been used over many years for measuring the environmental benefits. What I prefer is to use standards. I don't like inventing new things myself. I don't like inventing new things. I think that's a way of avoiding being compared with your peers. So I'd go back to some of the original green measures. A lot of them are actually covered in what used to be called social return on investment and is now called social value. For example, the Local Government Association in the UK has produced a set of TOMs, themes, outcomes and measures. They're now up to the version 2 of the TOMs, and that includes both economic boost, local economic boost and environmental improvements. And you will find some measures there, and that produces some standardization. If you go off and create your own, then, as I've said before, it's just really difficult to compare one with another.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Hugo. And you're quite right. We're close to time. There's probably around a dozen questions there that have come in. So I know you're going to do your best to see if you can answer them, and we'll post them. So
we'll post any unanswered questions. When we've answered them, we'll post them on the website with the write-up.
Okay. What I want to do then, just in wind up, really is take us through to a couple of upcoming events. So first of all, we're going to tell you about the Program Management SIG conference, 12th of March, and that's in Birmingham. It's called the Art and Science of Program Management. Along to that, a lot of work has gone to organise that, and actually I'll be there with Neil White, one of the other members of the Benefits and Value SIG, and we'll be following up with some practical advice on the webinar that we've had today. Finally, in terms of events, hot off the press, this is an event, we're calling it the Sponsor, an Important Role for Project Delivery, where we've got our conference organised. We want you to hold that date. It's a joint event between Benefits and Value SIG with Governance SIG and our friends at Enabling Change. You'll see there's the link, and it's entitled The Sponsor, an Important Role for Project Delivery. So there's our second event for your diaries. The first one, of course, was Program Management SIG. And then before finally, we'd like to know whether or not you'd be likely to attend that conference. So it will give us some ideas. And so if you can just take one more moment to fill this in. It's great to see that, well, we've got lots of maybes, we've got some no's, and we've got some yeses coming through. So it'll be good to get that information from yourselves. What I would say as well, if you can go back to that reflective practice question, if you haven't already answered it, and fill that in, that's a help for us to understand what you might do with what you've learned today. Thank you very much. Let's go to the final slide. And that really remains to say a big thank you today to Hugo and for the information you provided and bringing that guide to life. So thank you very much for that, Hugo. I know a lot of preparation went into this, and particularly for those who have attended today and participated. Again, couldn't have done it without you, so Thank you very much.
Very grateful everybody it came. I hope they enjoyed it. I'm delighted with feedback, and will answer the questions as soon as I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.